Catching up with contact tracing. Hello, I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you to episode 186 of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. A few weeks ago, we addressed the state of the contact tracing debate. But you know what? Things change. Apple and Google are out with their solution, while a number of regions have gone their own way. What is the state of things right now? Find out on this edition of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. I sort of assume that we all know what contact tracing is, but there's no harm in a reminder. Wikipedia says, in public health, contact tracing is the process of identification of persons who may have come into contact with an infected person and subsequent collection of further information about these contacts. It's an old practice, though it usually involves interviews and phone calls on scales nowhere near as large as the one needed to contain COVID-19. It was close to a couple of months ago that Apple and Google announced plans to work together on contact tracing APIs that health agencies around the world could use for the cause. Not everybody is interested in the Silicon Valley solution. So as not to end on a down note, we will start with regions that are going it alone and the problems that they have run into. Their biggest problem as a group, which they don't want to be, is not being able to get as deep into iOS as they would like. As we've discussed here before, Apple's then planned, now released COVID-19 contact tracing API will be able to run all the time, whether the phone is locked or unlocked, and whether the app is in the fore or running in the background. Apple walls off that access to third parties due to concerns about privacy and security. Another part of the Apple-Google solution is their decentralized versus centralized approach to data storage. Under the Silicon Valley solution, each phone would store a sort of signature from each other phone it had been around, anonymized and inaccessible. That would be decentralized. A centralized approach would have that information stored on some central server or servers with little expectation of privacy for the contacts being traced. Every county, state, region, and country is free to go their own way, but, as I mentioned a moment ago, they'll be locked out of the behind-the-scenes Bluetooth functionality on iOS devices that'll be built in or is built into the Apple-Google API. For areas that go their own way, that is proving to be a bit of a problem. Cult of Mac highlights a Bloomberg report saying the battle over decentralized versus centralized contact tracing apps continues to rage. Battle and rage seem fraught. I mean, they are kind of fighting, but really they've just, gone off and done their own things. Anyway, the Bloomberg report sized up the situation recently, saying from France to Australia to North Dakota, government apps designed to help authorities track and slow the spread of COVID-19 are struggling to accomplish their goals because of restrictions on data collection built into smartphones by Apple and Google. That's leaving public health officials with few options but to use a system designed by Apple and Google themselves. The tech companies say their tools preserve privacy and work seamlessly on devices used by some 3 billion with a B people. Here's the rub. Those same privacy features lock authorities out of collecting information they can use to track the broader spread of virus, spot larger patterns, and plan reopenings. Now, the curious part, to me anyway, is why various areas land where they land on this issue. I think we've talked here before about members of the U.S. Congress questioning whether people could trust Apple and Google almost as soon as the two companies announced plans for their API. The senators and congresspeople seem to think that they are more interested in user privacy than Silicon Valley is, and you know what? They may be. At the same time, a lot of regions that have said no, merci to the Silicon Valley solution seem to have done so because they want more information about people using the contact tracing apps, not less. and so we are treated to various versions of the wheel. In Europe, says SecureMac, most countries have adopted Apple and Google's API as the basis of their own contact tracing tools. However, the United Kingdom and France have opted to eschew Apple and Google's tool altogether to build their own centralized apps. And that has not been great for Great Britain. Last week, Apple Insider ran a piece about how the test version of the UK National Health Service's contact tracing app was going. The biggest complaint then, it was chewing straight through battery life. People also complained that it won't run on iPhones older than iPhone 5S, which Apple's API will. Well, it will up to iPhone 5S. More on that in a bit. Meanwhile, all Huawei phones are locked out of the Apple-Google API because of Google forcing Huawei to stop using its Google Play Store. The head of the NHS digital division is said to have said in an interview that missing a few models is no big deal as long as enough people who can use the app do so. But experts say you need 60% or more of a country's population to make the whole thing work, which makes one wonder about the decision to keep any phones from being able to use the app. Now, there is a glimmer of hope in the UK story. This time last week, Apple Insider said the country was mulling a move to the more private and efficient system from Apple and Google, though no official confirmation has yet been made. They may have more reason to think about that now. A piece from Business Insider this week says cybersecurity experts have found 7 flaws in the UK's contact tracing app. That's one for every day of the week. A report by 2 cybersecurity experts, Dr. Chris Culnane and Vanessa Teague, is said to have identified 7 security risks around the app, which is currently being trialed on the Isle of Wight and is supposed to be rolled out to the rest of the UK in the next week or 2. According to the report, the vulnerabilities include one which could allow hackers to intercept notifications and either block them or send out bogus ones telling people they've come into contact with someone carrying COVID-19. I wouldn't worry about it too much, though, because your battery will be dead from running the app, so I'm kidding. There's actually a lot of stuff here to worry about. Business Insider continues its report. The researchers also noted that unencrypted data stored on users' handsets could feasibly be accessed by law enforcement. Although the UK government has insisted that data would be used for nothing other than its COVID-19 response, a group of 177 cybersecurity experts have already called on it to introduce safeguards protecting the data from being repurposed for surveillance. They're also concerned that the way the app was built could make it very easy to identify individuals using the app, according to the report. Ian Levy, director of the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, blogged out a public thank you to the researchers for their work. Quoting his post, in future versions, the teams are going to try to publish a summary of the backlog of issues so people can see what we know about but haven't had time to fix yet. The app is a work in progress, and future versions will have all these issues fixed. So don't worry, it'll be secure someday. For the United Kingdom to change its royal mind and go Silicon Valley's way would have precedent. iMore highlights a report from The Guardian that has Australia pulling an about-face after running into problems of its own, having gone it alone. According to The Guardian, more than 5.1 million Australians have downloaded and registered to use the app on iPhone and Android devices, and while the Android version works while running in the background, i.e. not on the open screen, the iPhone version works best when the app is open on the screen and the phone is unlocked. Put another way, it doesn't work if that's not the case, which everybody knew going in, though the digital division of the Australian government refused to believe. iMore says the country now plans to update its app in the next few weeks, incorporating Apple and Google's framework so as to rectify the issue. Now, lest you think these are just troubles felt in foreign lands, let's buzz by the Beehive State. A report from Apple Insider says Utah has declined the Apple-Google API, opting instead for an app of its own. Built by 20, a company that the report says is known for an app that lets young people meet up in person. Well, we're really good at getting people together. We can probably keep them apart. Utah's app is called Healthy Together, which I'm not making up. With nary a concern for privacy, the app actually relies on personally identifiable information. According to Apple Insider, some of the data Healthy Together collects includes GPS, cell tower location data, and Bluetooth signal data. It also requests access to a user's phone contacts, according to national security blog Lawfare. Healthy Together's privacy policy states that this data may be shared with public health officials and a limited number of development staffers working at 20. The government website for Utah says the Silicon Valley Bluetooth-only solution provides a less accurate picture than the one Healthy Together is using. Of course, Apple Insider points out, by rejecting the Apple-Google API, it's likely that Healthy Together will work less effectively in the background due to built-in security restrictions in iOS. See also Australia. While people try to reinvent wheel after wheel after wheel, the big wheels in Silicon Valley are out with their solution. I'll tell you of this week's releases from Apple and Google in a moment, but first, a word about MacScan 3 from SecureMac. Macs aren't what they used to be. People who used to think they weren't real computers or were just overpriced toys, those same people now use Macs every day, trusting them with important work and a whole lot of personal information. As the Mac has grown, so has its status as a target. Bad guys want to steal the information stored on those Macs. Guard against that with MacScan 3. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It's developed by SecureMac, trusted names in computer security and developers of exceptional security software for over 20 years. MacScan 3 detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full-range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your computer. Give it a try. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. Then once you decide to buy for less. You can take a little off your subscription to MacScan 3 with offer code CHECKLIST. Try it first, watch it kick those tracking cookies to the curb. Then when you're ready to buy for less with offer code CHECKLIST at securemac.com/MacScan. If all the questionable decisions I told you about earlier were disheartening, here perhaps is reason to take heart. Apple and Google announced midweek this week that their contact tracing API work was ready. Then they let the world have it. Engadget says the two companies announced Wednesday that they would that day release their COVID-19 contact tracing technology to public health agencies around the world. As of Wednesday, the piece said 22 countries on 5 continents had requested the API. Cool as that news is, it's not mission accomplished, more like mission underway. As the report points out, Apple and Google are providing the API, but public health agencies will have to develop their own contact tracing apps. In an attempt to promote adoption and avoid fragmentation, use of the API will be restricted to one app per country, though there may be some exception if a country has opted for a state or regional approach, A handful of U.S. states, including Alabama, North Dakota, and South Carolina, plan to use the API for their own apps. Mission underway, as I say. Apple CEO Tim Cook heralded the news, taking to Twitter to saying technology can help health officials rapidly tell someone they may have been exposed to COVID-19. Today, the exposure notification API we created with Google is available to help public health agencies make their COVID-19 apps effective while protecting user privacy. One of the appeals of the Apple-Google contact tracing solution was the fact that the API would be baked into both the iOS and Android operating systems. VentureBeat says both Apple and Google hit with OS updates on Wednesday. Apple actually released a bunch of software updates, including iOS 3.5, iPadOS 3.5, and iOS 12.4.7. COVID-19 is the name of this game. The big feature, of course, is the integrated contact tracing API in the iOS updates. No apps or use for that yet, so it is not turned on, it's just there. The report says the contact tracing system is disabled by default unless an officially authorized notification app is installed. A number of reports I've seen say even when one of those is installed, the contact tracing API will still have to be approved by the user before it goes live. Now, there are two other COVID-19 related tweaks in the iOS and iPadOS update. If you've been out in public with a mask and tried to unlock your phone with Face ID, you've gotten used to waiting. That's because your iPhone's Face ID can't recognize you when you're wearing a mask. iOS 13.5 lets users skip that wait. VentureBeat says the update lets Face ID recognize a face mask and quickly allow passcode entry as an alternative. Handy. The other coronavirus tweak has to do with FaceTime functionality. According to the report, iOS 13.5 enables users of the group FaceTime video calling service to disable automatic prominence of the video tile for the current speaker, enabling work-from-home calls with less distracting animation when different people speak. Indications are that iPadOS 13.5 brings a lot of the same features as the iOS counterpart, minus the contact tracing stuff, of course, because that's not really how iPad works. Now, I said earlier that it looks like the Apple-Google contact tracing API will run as far back as iPhone 5S. Apple support site for iOS does say that iOS 12.4.7 does run on iPhone 5S, so not too shabby. The iOS updates were without a doubt Wednesday's biggest Apple updates, but they weren't the only ones. Mac Rumors says Apple also released tvOS 13.4.5 for 4th and 5th generation Apple TV models, as well as version 13.4.5 of the software for HomePod. Nothing groundbreaking for either update. Mac Rumors says tvOS updates are almost always minor in scale, focusing on under-the-hood bug fixes and small feature tweaks, rather than major outward-facing changes. Meanwhile, the site says release notes for the HomePod update indicate the same sorts of things. General improvements for stability and quality, with no new features mentioned. Of course, the other things to watch for on updates like these are security fixes. There likely are some in Wednesday's updates, though how many and what they address, we don't know yet. As of now, Apple says details on security updates in iOS and iPadOS 13.5, iOS 12.4.7, and tvOS 13.4.5 will be available soon. If your Apple TV isn't set for automatic updates, you can set 13.4.5 rolling by going to System, then Software Update. Your HomePod, meanwhile, is set for automatic updates. So, relax and enjoy the music. Or a podcast, maybe. If you're looking for more security news and how-tos, the place to look is SecureMac.com/checklist. There you'll find notes for this show, for the last show we did, for all the shows all the way back to the first one, and you can listen to each show right there as well. It all starts in one place, SecureMac.com/checklist. If you have a question you would like to ask or a topic you would like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. And we'll talk to you next week.